So it's my pleasure now to invite the next speaker, who is also coming not from close, not from London, is coming from abroad, from Spain, actually from Lanzarote in the Canary Island. And it's a pleasure because, of course, when we speak about weight stigma, it is fundamentally important to understand what it looks like, what it feels like being of stigma. And so it's my pleasure to invite Vicki Mooney. She's Executive Director of the European Coalition for People Living with Obesity. Vicki.
Thank you very much, Francesco. I think I just click across, yep. So it's an honor to be here with you all today as not only Executive Director for this tremendous group of people here that you see in the center, but as my own person, as a person who has obesity and various other NCDs. I'm not going to speak too much about our organization. You can see our information there. We're an umbrella organization, but what I'm going to talk to you about is what does obesity actually, you know, weight bias, stigma, discrimination, everything you've heard. What is that experience like? What's it look like? What's it like to live with that? What's it like to go through it? How does it feel? We heard tremendous presentations, and Danielle and Stuart have laid out some of what that is like for us. But as a person, I'm going to give you a run through of what life has been like. So I have no slides except for this beautiful one of beautiful people in non-stigmatizing images from across Europe. That is a part of our image bank that I'd encourage you to use. But I'm going to talk to you today about my experience from childhood. So I was born just over 6 pounds in weight. I was the average baby. But by the time I was 2-3 years old, I started to have a rounder stomach that didn't appear to go away, unlike my 2 little brothers. Now, we were a working class family. We went to school the same packed lunch. We had the same breakfast, which was generally porridge because, you know, we weren't particularly rich now in all fairness. So it was porridge or cornflakes every day. We had the same dinner. My brothers were more into playing with toy soldiers and the Atari, if anyone remembers from going back to the 80s. And I was the girl that loved to play tennis and skipping and balls and pads with my friends. So I was the active one, but I was the one with the larger stomach, which was predominant throughout my life. I kind of got to my teenage years where I was in school and I became that, which I think many of us, now this is my experience, remember this isn't every single person who has overweight or obesity, but this is mine. But I became that quintessential people pleaser. I became the yes girl for all my friends because I wanted to fit in. I wanted to be accepted. And I felt that my body shape and my body weight, as I was gaining probably about 10 to 12 pounds per year as 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 years old, every single year gaining almost a stone in weight. I wanted to fit in. Now, if you think back to the 80s, they didn't particularly understand what XL was or XXL or size 30 or 32 or 34. So we didn't really have a uniform to fit somebody like me. So I was bursting out of my shirt. My jumper was stretched beyond. And I was the girl who would, on a Thursday morning, 9:10 every Thursday morning, physical activity class, I would stand there and I would look at my feet knowing that I was not going to be picked for the team. And I would build up that anxiety in my head, knowing that I'm not going to be selected. Nobody's going to pick me. Somebody's going to be stuck with me on their team. Now, funny enough, there was a guy who was in our class who was the typical nerdy, slim, you know, had acne. He was highly intelligent. He also sat at the back of the class like me and didn't really like to draw attention to himself. But he would be left in line beside me. And the two of us would be picked last. Now, if I didn't catch the ball, I got slagged off. I got jeered. Oh, the fatty didn't get it. If he didn't get the ball, people would kind of ignore him because they couldn't say it was his weight. But I was the girl that was picked on. So as I went through school, I experienced so much stigma that that conversation in my head, as you would have seen on Stuart's presentation, all of those words, not acceptable, you're lazy, you're gluttonous, you're sloppy. All of that was in my head, and it became a narrative in my head. It became a vicious circle. I remember going to my guidance counselor, who, if you were brought up in a working class area, you didn't really have access to guidance counselors and, people that were, gone through third level education that were going to tell you what your life outside is going to look like. So I really thought, here's Miss Rooney, this amazing person who's going to tell me what I can do, because I did sit at the back of the class. I didn't raise my hand. I didn't want to draw attention to myself. I didn't want to have to stand up in the uniform that didn't fit me, where people sniggered and laughed and pointed and had another reason. So she said to me, she said, Vicki, you're not particularly academic. And I remember being sat there saying to myself, I don't even know what that actually means. What is she talking about? I'm not academic. She said, my best advice for you is to apply for jobs in the local factories. And so I did. And my very first job was as a glass blower and sheet metal worker in a factory at 17 years old. And I absolutely aced that job because I'm a creative person, and I didn't even realize that my creativity would come in. However, it stuck with me throughout into my 20s that I was not academic. I very quickly learned what it meant. Vicki, you're not academic. Those words stayed with me. I met my husband when I was 17 years old. And when I read the words on Stuart's slide, sexually undesirable, that's what I thought I was. I could not believe that a man fancied me, wanted to get into bed with me, wanted to kiss me, wanted to spend time with me in that way. And the very first man I was with was the man that I married. And at 22 years old, I got married. And at 24, I was very quickly kind of headed towards the 24 stone mark, same age, same weight. And I was pregnant, and I was overjoyed. And I went and I had that wonderful first experience of the scan to see your baby's heartbeat. And the midwife said to me going in, do you mind, there's some students here and, they've been following the midwives around. And I said, no, not at all. I was so excited. And my husband couldn't be there. And thank God he didn't arrive because I'd carried a lot of weight on my stomach, which meant a lot of the skin, even though I carried weight, it hung. And when she pulled back the curtain and I was in the gown that didn't fit, and she started looking for the heartbeat, she started to huff and puff. And she pushed around on my stomach. She couldn't find a heartbeat. There's like 10 or 15 students all stood around, and we're still waiting. And she muttered something under her breath. And then I realized a penny dropped. I have too much fat in my stomach. She can't find my baby because I have too much fat in my stomach. And when she did find the heartbeat, I sobbed my heart out, because not of joy of, oh my goodness, I can hear my baby's heartbeat, but of pure shame in front of these students and these people. That should have been one of the best experiences. But the look of disgust on that midwife's face broke my heart that day. And I didn't invite my husband for any other sessions with me, because that was just too much to bear. Now, through pregnancy, gestational diabetes and preeclampsia, they all came. I had pretty much everything that you would expect somebody of obesity to have. I ended up, like one of my colleagues, and she mentioned it earlier, on crutches. My hips, my pelvis started to separate. You name it, I had it. My first baby was 10 pounds and 8 ounces. My second baby was 10 pounds and 9 ounces, and at that stage I was 26 stone in weight. However, when I actually had my third child, interestingly, who's in the room with me today, I'd had bariatric surgery. And I remember the doctor saying to me, your babies are so big because of your weight problem. I had bariatric surgery, and incidentally enough, she came out at 11.3 when I was half my body weight. So you can take that and you can stick it. So effectively, I went through those experiences, my first 2 pregnancies, in a horrific place in myself. By the time I was 26, 27 stone, headed towards 28 stone, I went and I asked my doctor, I said, can I have a conversation with you about my weight? Now, that is probably one of the hardest things to do. And I'll tell you why, because I'll give you a morning of that appointment. I woke up and before my feet even hit the ground, I thought, what underwear am I going to wear that is going to suck in all of the fat and make me look just a little bit slimmer? And I thought, right, okay, into the bathroom, have a shower, lift up the folds of skin so that there isn't a smell from, you know, some of the infections you have in the folds of skin, so that you're hygienic, not unhygienic, because we're all deemed when we have obesity as unhygienic. In order to get into the shower, I had to lift the shower door off because I didn't fit in the shower. When I got out of the bathroom, I didn't dare look in the mirror because while I was in the shower, I'd already decided I wasn't going to eat anything in case I got on the scales and it was heavier. I was so ashamed of myself. My nerves had started to build about how am I even going to say, what can I do other than the milk diet, the cabbage diet, the soup diet, Weight Watchers, Slimming World, every diet I've been on, wearing a black sack, a trash bag while I'm out walking to sweat more. What else can I do? And I canceled that appointment so many times. So many times I canceled it because in my own head, I had judged myself because I'd lived my life of people around me judging me and shaming me because I had a disease that I didn't know I had. I didn't attend appointments for years, but finally I went to a weight management clinic in 2003. And by time 2005 rolled around, I became patient number 50 in Ireland to have bariatric surgery. Lost half of my body weight within 1 year and got pregnant on my daughter. And had the complete fear when I got pregnant. Oh, here we go again. What's going to happen this time? Now, when I say, I wish I had a good singing voice and I'd sing A Whole New World. You know that song? A Whole New World. That's what it was. I went from being an analyst and a job where I put my head down, my headphones in. I was a mum of a couple of children, one who had autism at the time, to actually being a plus size model on television, to being a TV personality, to writing my own book and becoming an author. I went into superwoman phase when I lost weight, when I had bariatric surgery. I seen a whole different side to how people are treated. The luxury of people not judging you and shaming you for how you look physically. And at the time, I thought this was the best thing ever. And now I think it is the most disgraceful thing ever that people are treated so differently. The average person at a till, at a checkout, didn't look me up and down. They smiled and they interacted with me and said how pretty my hair was, or they loved my clothes. I became a stylist for television, and I worked in that area where everything was just wonderful. I was more active than I ever was in my life. I was on my feet, working 2 jobs, separated from my husband, which is very common, which you may not know, very, very common post-surgery. And I skyrocketed. I had my daughter, and then I had 2 children with autism. And then it's 6-7 years after having bariatric surgery, and it's like, how am I gaining weight? What's going on here? I'm doing Zumba, I'm dancing every weekend with the girls, I'm 14 hours a day on my feet, I'm still eating small portions, and I'm gaining weight. What is going on? And then I started to read the signs. And my heart absolutely broke when I realized that weight regain was a thing. And that everything I was doing was fantastic for my health, but it wasn't going to change my obesity. And weight regain was just going to be a thing that I was going to have to battle, but I can't battle my own biology. So I aligned with some of the best people that I know in Ireland who had started a support group, Maura Murphy and Susie Burney. And there was a call by IASO to look for a patient to speak, to share their experience and their story in 2013. And here I was on television, smiling, dancing, everything is fantastic. Yeah, sure, no problem, I'll do that. And myself and Solveig, our president, who sat here with me, and Ken Clare one of my mentors, and many of us from around Europe, we rocked up to Sofia in Bulgaria in 2014. Now, imagine this, you've got over 2,000 healthcare professionals all talking about obesity, all there to learn the latest in research and science, and in rock the guinea pigs to people with obesity. And we were like, what on earth are we doing here? Why are we here? Why is our voice or our experience important? And I think for us, very, very quickly, we realized that there's a lot that we can do. And in 2019, we incorporated as an organization, an umbrella organization for people living with obesity across Europe to unite all of those voices and organizations, which is really difficult because everybody's got different missions, visions, they've got different plans. But my story didn't just end there. In 2021, I had gained back over 60 kilos of my weight that I'd lost. So I lost, 90 odd kilos, and here I am, I'd regained 60 kilos. And do you know what's even worse about that? The questions from people. How did you gain so much weight back? And in my mind, I'm like, what gives you the right to actually ask me that question, to ask about my body? Now, before I wouldn't have thought that, but this day and age and knowing what I know, what gives anybody the right to talk about somebody else's body or their weight or their obesity or their health? And that internalized stigma in my own head, by 2021, knowing all the science, knowing all the research, listening to these experts that I've worked with, I still could beat myself up better than any troll in the world or any person in my life that I love that could say the harshest thing, because I still had that self-blame. But Vicki, you shouldn't have been eating that. Maybe you should have done this. Oh, maybe it is your own fault. So I had a revision of my surgery in 2021. And I remember going in full of shame. And I remember my surgeon, he said to me, he said, Vicki, he said, when we give a new hip to somebody, right? 15 years later, he said, you know what we do? We go and we revise that. We look at it. We say, is this okay? Is this working? That's no different with bariatric surgery. Do you know how far bariatric surgery has come in 15 years? And I was like, absolutely stunned. I said, how can you akin it to a new hip? And he said, obesity is a disease. And that absolutely blew me away. It completely blew me away and made me realize that I need lifelong management and treatment for my obesity. And whether it is surgery or bariatrics, or whether it is pharmacotherapy, lifestyle intervention is a part of that. But I'm here in 2004 and I've lost in around the 50 kilo mark, which is great. However, and I wrote a few of these out, I'm almost finished as well because I know lunchtime is coming and I'm hungry too. But 2024, my mum said to me, your arms are too skinny. I'm like, I've just lost 50 kilos. My friend said to me, and I'll stand out so you can see what I'm talking about. When are you going to get that removed? Pointing at the loose skin in my stomach. For me, I still feel in ways I'm not acceptable. I've back problems now. I was fitter and healthier. Somebody said, you were so much healthier when you had 50 kilos extra. I could run around then. Now I can't. Now I have digestive problems. I have disc problems. The problems that come with surgery also come with a lot of weight, stigma, and discrimination and bias that is never ending. So on ending, I do have a question that I would like you, if you agree, to stand, which is, do you now actually believe that weight bias, stigma, and discrimination is a barrier to treatment for people living with obesity? And if you believe that, please stand in this room now. And if you're online, you can wave your hands and put a heart up, because for me, every single one of us here today needs to sign a pledge. Thank you very much, Francesco, for you and your team and all of these wonderful people for creating it. You need to treat people with dignity and respect, and many of you here do, but share that conversation with your folks and your teams. But most importantly, it's impossible to not know somebody living with obesity or overweight. So you have and we have a shared responsibility to take this conversation further today. And it's March 4th coming up. It's World Obesity Day. Get behind your patient organisations. I see Sarah is in the room here from her organisation, Sarah LeBrock. Ken Clare is online from his organisation. Nikki is here. Solveig's here. Get behind the patient organisations and make a difference, because you can. Thank you.
Well, I think there is no comment. This is as beautiful as it gets when, you know, there is an opportunity for us to learn about a problem, listening to people who have lived that problem, and also articulated so beautifully and so brilliantly as you did, Vicki. Thank you very much for doing that and for coming here. I just think we're going to have an opportunity to speak about the lived experience of stigma and obesity again during the panel. Sarah LeBrock would be here in the panel involved. I just want to say before we go to lunch that I personally feel we as medical community have a huge responsibility, and we should apologize to people like Vicki and Sarah and everybody else, because a lot of what happened, a lot of what has happened, and this bias being so spread is most likely our fault, at least in parts, in good parts. All this bias that spreads around and experiences that, you know, have to be lived in this way, including in the healthcare, it's shameful that people have to be treated like this by healthcare professionals. But it's something that has happened on our watch. We know better. We should know better. We know that obesity is not as simple as people say, but we haven't done very much, if anything at all, in standing by our patients, by people with obesity, and telling the rest of the world that obesity is not just as simple as everybody says. And maybe we have underestimated the damage that that narrative could have caused, but we have just seen how much damaging it is. So on behalf of, I hope I can speak on behalf of the medical profession. I think that we do have do owe an apology to people with obesity. I will leave it at that and enjoy the lunch. Stephanie, I guess we have technical time to communicate. Where are we joining back for the people online? Okay, 1:05 London time, of course, for those who are not here, the equivalent. Okay, thank you very much, everybody.